Hi everyone, welcome to English Story School, where we bring English learning to life through captivating stories and engaging tales. Join us on a journey where every story helps you master the language and discover new adventures. What would you do if you had the power to change someone's day, week, or even their entire life with just a single act of kindness? Imagine a group of individuals from all walks of life, different ages, backgrounds, and experiences, united by one common mission: spreading kindness wherever they go. This is the story of the Kindness Crew, a remarkable group of people who believe that even the smallest act of kindness can have a ripple effect, touching lives in ways we can't always predict. But who are these people, and how did they come together? What drives them to dedicate their time, energy, and sometimes even their resources to help others? In this comprehensive guide, we'll explore the origins, missions, and stories behind the Kindness Crew. We'll also dive deep into how you too can become part of this incredible movement. Every great movement begins with a single, seemingly insignificant moment, one that plants the seed for something much larger to grow. For the Kindness Crew, that moment came from a woman named Emma, an ordinary person with an extraordinary belief in the transformative power of kindness. Emma's life wasn't always easy. Like many of us, she faced her share of struggles: work stress, family pressures, and the feeling of being overwhelmed by the world's constant demands. It was during one of these particularly difficult times that Emma experienced something that would change her life forever. It was one of those mornings that seemed destined to go wrong from the moment Emma opened her eyes. The chill in the air crept through the small gaps in her window, making her wish she could burrow under her blankets and forget the world existed for just a little longer. But there was no time for that luxury. Her alarm had gone off for the third time, a sharp reminder that she was already running late. She forced herself out of bed, the cold floor sending a shiver up her spine as she hurried to get ready. As Emma stepped outside, the grayness of the morning matched her mood. Thick, low-hanging clouds blotted out the sun, casting the world in a dreary, lifeless light. It felt like even the weather was against her. She trudged toward her car, clutching her keys in one hand and a steaming cup of coffee in the other. Her breath fogged up in front of her face as she approached the driver's side door, only to be met with the most dreaded sight. Her car refused to start. No matter how many times she turned the key, the engine sputtered weakly before falling silent. A sigh of frustration escaped her lips, her breath lingering in the cold air. Feeling a knot tighten in her chest, she glanced at her watch. Of all days for this to happen, it had to be today. She had a crucial meeting at work, one that could make or break her project, and now she was on the verge of being late. After a few futile attempts at starting the car, Emma gave up. She would have to walk the rest of the way, which meant braving the cold and hoping she wouldn't be too late. As she hurried down the street, clutching her coffee for warmth, she could feel the weight of the world pressing down on her. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the universe had decided to pile every small inconvenience onto her shoulders all at once. Then, as if on cue, the universe delivered another blow. She tripped on an uneven sidewalk, and the steaming cup of coffee slipped from her hand, splattering all over her favorite sweater. The warm liquid soaked through the fabric instantly, leaving a dark, spreading stain and a feeling of utter defeat. She stood frozen for a moment, staring down at the mess, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. It wasn't just the coffee, it wasn't just the sweater, it was everything: the car, the cold, the meeting, the endless string of small disasters that had piled up over the past few weeks. This morning was just the culmination of all the little frustrations that had been building, and now they had come crashing down on her. With a deep breath, Emma wiped at the coffee stains with a tissue. Though it didn't do much good, she felt like giving up, like turning around and going home. But something inside her kept her moving. She knew she couldn't afford to miss work, not today. So she continued on, feeling the sticky warmth of coffee on her skin, the cold air biting at her cheeks, and the weight of everything pressing down harder with each step. By the time she reached the small cafe near her office, her last refuge before facing the day ahead, she was utterly spent. The soft bell above the door chimed as she entered, the warmth of the cafe contrasting with the harshness of the outside world. She let out a long sigh as she took a seat by the window, her fingers still trembling from the cold. She could see the bustling streets outside, people hurrying to their destinations, seemingly unbothered by the weather or the chaos of their morning routines. But for Emma, this day already felt like a battle she was losing. As she stared out the window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass, she couldn't help but wonder if things would ever start to go right again. As Emma stood in line at the cafe, her body was present, but her mind was miles away. The soft hum of conversations around her and the gentle hiss of the espresso machine faded into the background as her thoughts swirled like a storm inside her head. Her eyes were fixed on the brightly lit menu above the counter, but she wasn't really reading it. Instead, she was running through an endless mental checklist, each item more overwhelming than the last. The project deadline looming at work, the emails she hadn't responded to, the laundry piling up at home, the car that had just broken down. Everything seemed to demand her attention at once, pulling her in a dozen different directions. Her heart raced as the pressure of it all closed in. She could feel her pulse in her temples, the tension sitting heavily on her chest. Even the simple act of ordering a coffee felt like another task she had to get through, another decision she didn't have the energy to make. What kind of coffee? Hot or iced? Add a pastry? Each question felt strangely monumental, as if it symbolized the larger, more daunting choices she would have to face throughout the day. She glanced at her phone, then back at the menu, her mind a chaotic mess of thoughts colliding. Suddenly, a gentle tap on her shoulder pulled her from her spiral. Startled, Emma blinked and turned her head, only to find herself looking into the kind eyes of the woman standing directly in front of her, in line. The woman was about Emma's age, with a serene expression that contrasted starkly with the frantic storm brewing inside Emma's own mind. Her face radiated warmth, her smile gentle and unhurried, as though she had all the time in the world. "I've got your coffee today," the woman said, her voice calm and soothing, like a soft breeze cutting through the haze of Emma's thoughts. At first, the words didn't fully register. Emma stood there, blinking, trying to process what she had just heard. Had this woman, this stranger, really just offered to buy her coffee? In that split second, a flood of emotions surged through Emma. Confusion, surprise, disbelief. She wasn't sure how to respond. Her immediate instinct was to decline, to say something like, "Oh no, you don't have to do that," or to politely brush off the gesture as unnecessary. But before she could open her mouth, the woman's smile deepened, and she added, "It looks like you've had a rough morning." There was something about the way she said it, something so simple yet so understanding, that hit Emma right in the heart. It wasn't just the words, it was the acknowledgement, the recognition, the fact that someone had noticed, that someone had seen the weight she was carrying, and even for a brief moment wanted to help lighten it. It was as if, in that moment, this stranger had peered through the armor Emma had hastily thrown on that morning and had glimpsed the tired, overwhelmed person beneath. Tears pricked the corners of Emma's eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. She hadn't realized how much she had needed this, a small act of kindness, a reminder that the world wasn't entirely indifferent to her struggles, that amidst the rush of people, deadlines, and endless to-do lists, someone had taken the time to see her, really see her. Thank you, Emma finally managed to say, her voice thick with emotion. She wasn't used to being on the receiving end of such kindness from strangers, especially on a day when she felt so invisible, so lost in her own problems. The woman smiled again, a gesture so genuine it seemed to warm the very air around them. "It's nothing," she said, waving off Emma's gratitude. "We all have days like this. Consider it my way of paying it forward." Emma watched as the woman turned back to the counter to place her own order, the weight on her chest suddenly feeling a little lighter. It wasn't the free coffee that made the difference, though that gesture in itself was enough to lift Emma's spirits. It was the realization that even in the middle of her worst day, there were moments of grace, moments where human connection could pierce through the noise and remind her that she wasn't alone. As she stepped up to the counter to place her order, Emma found herself smiling, truly smiling, for the first time that day. The barista, having witnessed the exchange, handed her the coffee with a knowing nod, as if they too understood the significance of that small moment. Emma took the warm cup in her hands, feeling the heat seep through her fingers and spread warmth through her whole body. It wasn't just coffee anymore, it was a lifeline, a reminder of the goodness that could still exist even on the hardest days. As Emma left the cafe, the world outside didn't seem quite so bleak. The sky was still grey, the air still cold, but the weight she had carried in with her had somehow shifted. It wasn't gone entirely, her problems hadn't magically disappeared, but for the first time all morning, they didn't feel insurmountable. And all because a stranger had noticed and had chosen to do something small, yet profoundly meaningful. The simple act of buying a cup of coffee had changed everything. It wasn't just the coffee, it was the reminder that kindness still existed, that even in the busiest of days, people still cared for one another. Emma took a deep breath as she walked, the crisp air filling her lungs, and for the first time in hours, she felt like maybe, just maybe, things would be okay after all. Emma was taken aback. It was such a simple gesture, just a few dollars for a cup of coffee, but it was more than that. It was an acknowledgement that she existed, that someone saw her and cared, even if just for a moment. That small act of kindness lifted the fog that had clouded her mind and filled her with a warmth she hadn't felt in days. The woman handed Emma her coffee, gave her a reassuring nod, and left the cafe, likely unaware of the profound impact she had just made. Emma couldn't stop thinking about that moment. It wasn't just the coffee that made a difference. It was the fact that a complete stranger had taken the time to reach out with kindness, expecting nothing in return. Emma realized that if something so small could turn her entire day around, what would happen if more people did the same? She started to notice the little acts of kindness happening all around her. An elderly man helping a young mother carry her groceries, a teenager offering their seat to someone on the bus, a neighbor shoveling another's driveway without being asked. These moments, often overlooked or taken for granted, began to form a pattern in Emma's mind. They weren't just isolated incidents. They were part of a larger tapestry of kindness that wove communities together, even if people didn't always see it. Emma began to believe that kindness had the power not only to heal individuals, but to transform entire communities. This belief became her guiding principle, something she held onto tightly as she navigated her own life. But Emma knew that belief alone wasn't enough. She needed to take action. Determined to make a difference, Emma began performing small acts of kindness in her own community. She started with what she knew she could do: baking cookies for her neighbors, volunteering at local shelters, and leaving encouraging notes on the windshields of cars in her neighborhood. These were simple actions, but each one carried with it the potential to brighten someone's day, to remind them that they weren't alone. One day, after delivering a fresh batch of cookies to a neighbor who had just lost her husband, Emma felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced in a long time. She realized that these acts of kindness didn't just help others, they also healed her. In giving to others, she found purpose and connection in a world that often felt disconnected and impersonal. But as Emma's kindness project grew, she began to realize that she couldn't do it alone. There were too many people who needed a kind word, a helping hand, or a small gesture of goodwill. Emma knew that if she really wanted to make an impact, she needed to involve others. She needed to create a community around the idea of kindness. Emma's first step was to reach out to the people closest to her, her friends, family, and co-workers. She shared her story with them, telling them about the stranger who had bought her coffee and how that single moment had sparked a fire within her. Emma asked them to join her in a new initiative she called the Kindness Challenge. The premise was simple. For 1 month, everyone involved would commit to performing one act of kindness each day. It didn't matter how small the gesture was. What mattered was the intention behind it. Emma encouraged them to share their experiences with the group, to inspire one another with stories of how their kindness had touched others. To Emma's surprise and delight, not only did her friends and family accept the challenge, but they also embraced it with enthusiasm. They began sharing stories of how they had helped strangers, supported co-workers, or simply taken the time to listen to someone who needed to talk. These stories were heartwarming, inspiring, and most importantly, contagious. The more they shared, the more others wanted to join in. What started as a small, informal challenge among friends quickly grew into something much larger. Word began to spread beyond Emma's immediate circle, reaching neighbors, colleagues, and even local businesses. People were drawn to the idea of the Kindness Challenge because it was something everyone could do. It didn't require money, special skills, or a lot of time, just the willingness to make a difference in someone else's life. Soon, the Kindness Challenge became a community-wide initiative. Emma's small group of friends turned into a network of people who were committed to spreading kindness in every corner of their town. They began organizing events, fundraisers, and campaigns, all focused on one goal: making kindness a way of life. The impact was immediate and profound. People started noticing the difference in their community. There was a sense of connection and goodwill that hadn't been there before. Neighbors who had never spoken to one another were now working together on community projects. Local businesses started offering discounts to customers who participated in the Kindness Challenge. Schools incorporated kindness activities into their curriculum, teaching children the importance of empathy and compassion. As the movement grew, it became clear that this was more than just a month-long challenge. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Emma and her friends realized that they had created a community of people who were passionate about kindness and wanted to continue spreading it long after the challenge ended. And so, the Kindness Crew was born. The Kindness Crew wasn't just about performing random acts of kindness, it was about creating a culture of kindness. They believed that by working together, they could make a lasting impact on their community and beyond. They started to formalize their efforts, organizing regular meetings, planning larger events, and even collaborating with other organizations to reach more people. Emma, who had once been an ordinary person struggling with the challenges of daily life, had become the leader of a movement that was changing lives. Her belief in the power of kindness had ignited a spark that grew into a flame, lighting the way for others to follow. And it all began with a single cup of coffee. The story of the Kindness Crew is a testament to the idea that small actions can lead to big changes. What started as a simple gesture, a stranger buying Emma a cup of coffee, set off a chain reaction that touched the lives of countless people. It's a reminder that kindness, no matter how small, has the power to create a ripple effect, spreading from person to person, community to community, and even beyond. The Kindness Crew's journey is far from over. They continue to grow, inspire, and make a difference in the world, one act of kindness at a time. And as they do, they carry with them the belief that kindness isn't just a choice. It's a movement, one that has the power to change the world. As the Kindness Crew's influence grew, so did their impact. They began to attract attention from local media, which helped spread their message even further. Stories of the Kindness Crew's efforts began to circulate, inspiring other communities to start their own chapters. The crew's first major project was Operation Warm Hearts. During a particularly harsh winter, they organized a massive coat drive, collecting hundreds of coats, hats, and scarves for the homeless. But it wasn't just about the clothing. They also set up stations where people could come in for a hot meal, talk to volunteers, and receive information on housing and job opportunities. What made the Kindness Crew different was their approach. They didn't just drop off donations and leave. They stayed, interacted, and made sure people knew they were cared for. This personal touch became the hallmark of their work. Whether they were visiting nursing homes to spend time with the elderly, mentoring at-risk youth, or organizing surprise parties for lonely community members. The Kindness Crew also focused on education, believing that the key to lasting change was teaching the next generation the value of kindness. They worked closely with schools to create kindness programs where students learned about empathy, compassion, and the power of small actions. These programs weren't just theoretical. They involved real-world projects such as organizing food drives, writing letters to soldiers overseas, and creating care packages for those in need. Behind every act of kindness is a story, and the Kindness Crew has no shortage of them. Let's take a look at a few of the most memorable ones. The surprise birthday party. When the Kindness Crew learned about Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly woman who lived alone and hadn't celebrated her birthday in years, they decided to change that. They organized a surprise birthday party, inviting her neighbors and community members. The look of joy on Mrs. Jenkins's face as she blew out her candles was unforgettable. She later said it was the happiest she'd felt in years. A second chance. One of the Kindness Crew's most ambitious projects was partnering with a local rehabilitation center to help former inmates reintegrate into society. The crew provided mentorship, job training, and emotional support, helping these individuals find work and rebuild their lives. One participant, James, went on to start his own business and now volunteers with the crew, mentoring others who are where he once was. The Kindness Marathon. To raise awareness and funds for their initiatives, the Kindness crew organized a city-wide marathon. But this wasn't just any marathon. Along the route, there were stations where participants could perform acts of kindness, such as donating to a charity, writing encouraging notes, or helping out at a community garden. The event was a huge success, bringing together people of all ages and raising thousands of dollars for local causes. By now, you might be wondering how you can get involved. The good news is that anyone can join the Kindness crew. Whether you want to start your own chapter in your community or simply take part in the Kindness Challenge, there are plenty of ways to get involved. 1. Start small. You don't need a large group or a big event to make a difference. Start with small acts of kindness in your daily life. Hold the door open for someone, pay for a stranger's coffee, or leave a kind note for a coworker. These small actions add up and can have a big impact. 2. Join a local chapter. If there's already a Kindness Crew chapter in your area, reach out and get involved. Attend meetings, participate in events, and start spreading kindness in your community. If there isn't a chapter nearby, consider starting one. The Kindness Crew provides resources and support to help you get started. 3. Take the Kindness Challenge. Like Emma's original challenge, the Kindness Challenge is all about making kindness a daily habit. Commit to performing one act of kindness each day for a month. Share your experiences with friends and family and encourage them to join you. 4. Volunteer your time. The Kindness Crew often partners with local organizations and charities that could use extra hands. Whether it's helping out at a food bank, volunteering at a shelter, or tutoring students, there are plenty of opportunities to give back. 5. Spread the word. One of the most powerful ways to grow the kindness movement is by sharing your story. Talk about your experiences on social media, write about them in local publications, or simply tell your friends and family. The more people hear about the impact of kindness, the more likely they are to get involved. One of the most profound lessons the Kindness Crew has learned is that kindness has a ripple effect. When you do something kind for someone, they're more likely to pass that kindness on to others. It's a chain reaction that can transform entire communities. For example, after the Kindness Crew organized a neighborhood cleanup, residents began taking better care of their streets and parks. This led to a stronger sense of community pride and even inspired other neighborhoods to start their own cleanups. What started as a simple act of picking up trash turned into a movement of environmental stewardship. Another example is the Kindness Rocks project. The crew painted inspiring messages on rocks and placed them around town for people to find. The idea caught on, and soon others were creating and hiding their own kindness rocks. These small messages of hope and encouragement brought smiles to countless faces and reminded people that they weren't alone. The Kindness Crew's journey is far from over. As they continue to grow, they're exploring new ways to spread kindness on a larger scale. They're working on developing online resources, such as a kindness curriculum for schools, and a digital platform where people can share their acts of kindness and connect with others in the movement. The crew is also planning to expand their reach by partnering with international organizations and participating in global initiatives. They believe that kindness knows no borders, and their ultimate goal is to create a worldwide network of kindness ambassadors. As we come to the end of this guide, I want to leave you with this thought. Kindness is a choice. Every day, we're presented with opportunities to make a difference in someone's life. It doesn't have to be grand or expensive. Sometimes the smallest gestures have the biggest impact. So ask yourself, what can you do today to make the world a little kinder? Whether it's a smile, a helping hand, or a kind word, your actions matter. And who knows, you might just inspire someone else to do the same. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.